This morning I have for you the story, the quite believable story, about the backfiring of Black Lives Matter activism, Antifa riots, and Democrat policies. We've learned something quite tragic, actually. As most of you know, there's been a surge in violent crime, murders, and it's sad, really. They're mostly affecting these big blue Democrat-run cities, and now we're learning it's mostly impacting lower-income Black and Latino neighborhoods. Black Lives Matter and these far-left progressives want to come out. They want to defund the police, and this is what you can expect to happen. When the police stop working in these communities, crime explodes. There was a poll from Gallup. They asked many Black people in America if they liked the amount of police they had or wanted more or less. Did they want to abolish the police? Surprisingly, I think it was around 83% that said they were either happy with or wanted more cops. It was only around 20% that wanted more cops, but it was like 63 that liked the amount of police they had. They did not want them defunded or abolished. Yet still, the Democrats win, yet still people vote for them. Now let's talk, we'll get into all of that. And we'll start with the political ramifications of Black Lives Matter riots, Antifa riots. It should be a surprise to no one that people don't like riots. And because of this, and because of Democrat support for Black Lives Matter has fallen precipitously. Take a look at this tweet from the New York Times Opinion. They say, after Mr. Floyd's death, Republicans reported much stronger support for Black Lives Matter than they had earlier in 2020. But perhaps even more striking is the rapid decline. Now, heavens, what could have happened after the death of George Floyd that resulted in a rapid decline in support for Black Lives Matter? Julio Rosas says the word riot does not appear once in the article, but they did manage to include Latinx. Another attempt to memory hole the massive riots from last year. How utterly stupid. Look at this image. Democrats' support for Black Lives Matter went straight up and then slowly went down. Why would it even go down at all for Democrats? It should go up and then up, right? Among all voters, the drop was dramatic, dropping below zero net support. It's in the negative now. Republicans are much less supportive of Black Lives Matter than they were at the beginning. After the death of George Floyd, even Republicans were saying this is a bad thing. We can't allow this. Then came the riots. Then came the support for the riots. Then came that Black Lives Matter activist in Chicago saying smashing up stores and stealing stuff was reparations. And Republicans were like, yo, I don't support that. Because when Black Lives Matter first meant, after the death of George Floyd, a bunch of activists laid down on the sidewalk and put their hands behind their back. In the street. And it was a large protest action. People saw that and said, yeah, man, I hear you. Can't complain. Like, we all feel bad about this. And then someone threw a brick. And when Republicans said, hey, yo, like, we all agree, right? Like, this was a bad thing, but please don't throw bricks. And they said, don't you tell me what to do. The Democrats supported it. Kamala Harris, as most of you know, because I bring it up all the time, solicited donations to get these people out of jail. Support tanked. Worst of all of it is not even that political support is tanking for a group. The worst of it is how it's negatively impacting those Black Lives Matter was supposed to help. It's not. It's hurting them a lot. And this is why I'm sick and tired of these morons marching around doing the red salute. You know what the red salute is? Why don't you Google it? When they raise the fist, the symbol of Black Lives Matter is the communist salute. It is the red salute. Imagine if a bunch of Trump supporters were marching around doing Roman salutes. Oh, can you, huh? So don't give me one side's worse than the other. It's Weimar Germany. Here we go. I see photos of friends and family, people I know, who are too stupid, lazy, and ignorant to care about what they're doing as they burn down minority neighborhoods. Literally, when the Antifa extremists and Black Lives Matter went to Atlanta and started destroying Black-owned businesses, and they say Black Lives Matter. Or that video where two white women are vandalizing a building and two Black women say, what are you doing? Stop, get out of our neighborhood. And the white women went, no, we're helping you. We're helping you as we burn down your city. Figuratively, of course, not the entire city was roasted, just a few select buildings. And these people say they're the good guys and the media protects them. You know, it's always been the Democrats, right? They were the party of the Confederates. They were the party of Jim Crow and the Klan. Surprise, surprise. They may have put on a mask trying to claim that they're the heroes. But here we go again. The woke liberals and leftists going around smashing up buildings, advocating for policies that destroy the black community, the Latino community, minority communities. And it's right here in black and white. The numbers don't lie. Murders are rising the most in a few isolated precincts of major cities. I saw this story and I said, well, maybe that's good news. I mean, it's bad news in general, but maybe, we think these cities are aflame, like it's the end. Maybe there's some good news in that it's just high crime areas. And then I thought, you know what? How much you want to bet? The crime is skyrocketing in the areas where they need the police most, low income. And then I was surprised to find, actually, it was racial minorities. I didn't see that coming. I thought it was going to be like shopping districts. No joke. In Illinois, some of the highest crime rates are in like wealthy shopping districts. And I was like, that's bad, But it turns out the Black Lives Matter activism is doing nothing but destroy. It's a sad story, man. Wall Street Journal reports a murder wave in U.S. cities that started last year is carrying forward into 2021. And a growing body of research shows a pattern behind the rise. It has been concentrated in relatively few poor neighborhoods, typically black and Hispanic, with persistent histories of violence. As elected officials and communities search for solutions, recognizing this geographical reality is essential, say social scientists and police officials who have studied the murder wave. Police and other city authorities will need to focus their efforts on a few areas that have missed out on the urban renaissance of the past 2 decades, as their middle-class residents have fled. Controversy over policing has complicated matters after the conviction of Derek Chauvin, a white officer. This we know. It's so annoying when they're like, they did break down the story again. A police officer who was arrested and charged and went through a trial. It's like, great, write me a different story. I don't care. We know. Homicide is up 9.1% in New York. 22% so far in Chicago, following double-digit increases in both places and in many other cities last year. Mr. Ludwig calculates that nearly 3/4 of Chicago's homicide increase in 2020 was concentrated in a cluster of 8 of the city's 25 police districts, mostly in the city's predominantly black South Side and largely Hispanic West Side. Similar patterns have shown up elsewhere. New York saw a 47% increase in homicide in 2020, concentrated in a patch of Brooklyn neighborhoods with a long history of violence, including Brownsville, Crown Heights, and Bedford-Stuyvesant. It also hit the South Bronx and Harlem section of Manhattan, said Michael LaPitre, the New York Police Department's chief of crime control strategies. And you know what they'll do? They'll say, this just proves the cops are racist. That's the game they play. They propose policies which destroy. Then they claim that the destruction is actually the fault of the problem they're trying to solve instead of themselves, to put it mildly. When they say, defund the police, and then the cops say, okay, and stop showing up, and then crime explodes, they say, see, the cops weren't doing anything anyway. See, the cops are racist and won't help these neighborhoods. We got to defund even more. So I wonder about all this. Is the real goal of the Democrats just to really destroy the lives of black people? Honestly, I think so. I take a look at many of these prominent black conservatives who advocate for responsibility, hard work, meritocracy. And there are many prominent, obviously black leftists who advocate for the opposite. I have to wonder what will truly help minority communities, assuming they actually need the help. Maybe the reality is individualism, taking personal responsibility. But the Democrats keep proposing things that negatively impact all minorities. It's not just about the black community, but it is historically. And, I've done a documentary. I've done multiple segments talking about systemic racism, things like redlining and blockbusting. And it's no surprise to me that when you look at the history of redlining and blockbusting, these are practices that targeted the black community to hurt them. What's happening now with Black Lives Matter? Surprise, surprise. They've put a mask on its face. But once again, policies are being implemented by the Democrats that hurt the black community. I wonder about this. How much do you want to bet? Okay, because I've done a documentaries talking about redlining and blockbusting. How much do you want to bet? When they were doing this, they said it was for the good of the community. We're trying to help. And they didn't. They hurt. And they're doing the same thing today as they always do. And these uppity, well-to-do white progressives from the suburbs, people that I know, members of my own extended family, marching around raising the communist fist, too lazy, too stupid, too ignorant to care about the destruction they bring. Check this. I want to show you this thread from Ezra Klein. Wow. Sad stuff, really, because they'll just keep doubling down. Ezra Klein, as you know, is the founder of Vox.com, VOX, and he says, violent crime is spiking. Homicides in cities were up by 25 to 40% in 2020, the largest single-year increase since 1960. And 2021 isn't looking any better. This is a crisis on its own terms, but it's also a crisis on the broader liberal project in two downstream ways. First, violent crimes supercharges inequality. Families who can flee do. Businesses close or never open. Banks won't make loans. Property value plummets. Children are traumatized with lifelong impacts on stress and cognition. Now, this is where this is where I get really, really angry from the propaganda of these people. There's a viral video from, from ACT.TV or something about systemic racism. And they say there are two people, Johnny and Jimmy. Johnny, a young white man from a white suburb, and Jimmy, a young black man from a black inner city neighborhood. And they go on to explain that institutional or systemic racism is that property taxes pay for schools. And because the property value is so low in the low income neighborhood, there's not a whole lot of taxes going in to these schools. And so the schools suffer. But in the white suburbs where they're wealthier, they can pay more money in taxes from higher property values, which makes the schools better. What does that have to do with race? Wouldn't it just mean that low income areas in general suffer this fate? And we should allocate resources from wealthier areas to poorer areas for better schools? Because we're only as strong as our weakest link. I think that would be absolutely fantastic to do. In fact, I think most cities actually do this. Here's what bothers me about the propaganda. The violent crime that Ezra Klein is talking about, which is predominantly affecting minority neighborhoods, drops the property value, makes it so that people who do own homes in these areas won't see a payout. Nobody will want to move there. This is what I always found interesting. You know, when I was doing a lot of research for this, I thought, isn't gentrification good for people who own homes in black neighborhoods? I mean, think about it. You have a house worth $100,000 in a black neighborhood. All of a sudden, a Starbucks pops up, a Bank of America. Now your house is worth $200,000. You'll get a tax reassessment, and they say, okay, now you got to pay more property taxes. All right. Or you can sell your house, double your money, because now it's worth more. Go buy another $100,000 house in a different neighborhood. Maybe you don't want to move. I mean, so there's bad things about it for sure. But now you have more wealth, a lot of it. Gentrification, the property value skyrocketing, can be a good thing. Not only that, you could rent out the house some young college kids and then be a landlord and then go buy another lower income house. I don't have all the solutions. But I can tell you, as violent crime skyrockets, nobody wants to live there. And because nobody wants to live there, the property values won't go up. And that means it's just going to be eternal suffering. Surprise, it's Black Lives Matter policies that are causing this. He says, bans lifelong impacts on stress and cognition. Second, fear of violence undermines liberal politics. Just look at America post 9/11, or after the crime surges of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Strong men politicians win. Punitive responses like mass incarceration and warrior policing rise. Social trust collapses. We're not there yet. Larry Krasner survived his primary challenge in Philadelphia, which is hilarious. They just can't help but vote for more. Man, you got to get out of these cities. They are run. They are run like trash. We are seeing other signs. Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms isn't running for re-election after being attacked by challengers as soft on crime. Chesa Bowden is facing a recall effort in SF. I know. I could have dedicated a whole segment to this. Maybe I'll talk about it at one. Violence is the second most important issue to Democrats in the NYC mayoral primary, behind coronavirus, but ahead of housing affordability and racial inequality. The politics of this could really tip, and not just in other cities. If these numbers keep getting worse, then as with Nixon and Reagan in the 70s and 80s, it could bring law and order conservatives, including Trump, back to power in 2024, so saith Ezra Klein. More than that, crime should be an issue liberals focus on eagerly. People deserve to be safe from crime and safe from state violence. That's foundational to a good life. Ezra, could you take 2 seconds to look in the mirror Okay. What do these people care about? You got to wear your mask. Tribal bullcrap. That's what they care about. Stupid restrictive policies, panic, paranoia, fear, not crime. No, they had police guarding the Black Lives Matter painting, not actually policing neighborhoods that have high crime to protect black communities. Ezra says, crime should be a focus of liberals. That's foundational to a good life. Too often, they're given a choice between one or the other, and it's often a false choice at that. So I asked, he spoke with James Foreman Jr., author of the Pulitzer Prize-winning Locking Up Our Own, to come on the podcast and talk through the way crime warps politics, the legacy of the 80s and 90s, and what a liberal response to violent crime looks like. There is good news here. We know a lot more about what works to prevent violent crime, both in terms of policing and in terms of other institutions we can and should build. And we're not in the age of austerity. There's a lot we can do and should do, but we need to do it fast. One central piece of this response should be seriously investing in community organization and violence interruption programs that have been proven again and again to work. The American Jobs Act includes that, though it doesn't get much press. Biden jobs bill would send $5 billion to gun violence prevention. Okay. I like violence interruption stuff. I don't know how successful it is. I like the idea of community outreach groups that focus on talking with young people in these communities, not going and sending in a bunch of cops and guns. I like constructive dialogue, activist groups in the community. I've interviewed people who do this, and in my experience, I've seen some of it be particularly effective. There was it's like you got to get the moms out there. You know what I mean? Like the local community, you got to get the moms to go out. You don't go out with weapons, and they go and talk to people. You get active in the community. That's what you need to do. Inspire people to build. And I think what you got to do is you got to start changing the culture. You got to make people believe in, respect comes from merit, not from the barrel of a gun. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, man. It's not a race thing. It is very cultural. And what I mean is the white areas have the same cultural issues. Like the fights would break out. You'd have like a white dude and a Mexican dude or a black dude. It was multicultural gang violence and honor violence. Not a good thing for anybody. Getting the moms out there to change stuff. That's good. If Biden's going to fund stuff like that, I'm for it. I'm not a big fan of his policies, I think, and I don't trust him. I think for the most part, they're burning these things down. Ezra goes on to post his story talking about more of this, but let me show you what really just, I don't think we're solving this problem anytime soon. As you may know, because I covered this last week, Philadelphia's progressive DA wins big in primary, boosting momentum for reform movement. Reform movement? It's been a failure. This guy got elected in 2017. It's 2021 as the DA. He has been soft on crime. So soft, in fact, you might as well use the Philadelphia's stance on crime for a MyPillow commercial. Very soft. Your best night's sleep ever. Use promo code POSO. Shout out, Jack. Anyway, he's so soft on crime, it may in fact be a better night's... Actually, no. It'll be a much worse night's sleep as the gunshots ring out outside your window. But they voted for it. They voted for it again. They voted for it again. So what am I supposed to say? I lived in the Philadelphia area. I was right to leave. And people say, Tim, you advocate for people standing up and fighting, but you left with your tail between your legs. I wouldn't say that's maybe a little harsh. I would say that's maybe a little harsh. I wouldn't say with my tail between my legs. I think I came to a realization. As Ezra Klein pointed out, those who can flee will. It'll never stop. You know why? Flight is an immediate solution to an immediate problem. Politics is a long-term attempt at solving an immediate problem. Here's the problem for me. We advocated. We spoke up. We challenged. I speak up for hours a day. And what did we get for it? They re-elect these people. Our pleas, our facts, they have fallen on deaf ears. Politics of emotion work. And I think it's a black hole sucking us in with no escape. We've crossed the event horizon. When a Democrat comes out and says, I will give you all money, cash money, vote for me. People go, okay. Now, you still need some charisma behind it. Obviously, Andrew Yang couldn't pull it off, but maybe he will in New York. And then when you come out and say, we must take responsibility and do hard work, people go, hard work? I don't want to do hard work. So in the end, what happens? Republicans eventually capitulate to Democrat standards. Democrats pull further and further left. Republicans trail left to try and compete. But you can't compete with it. When someone's like, we should give everyone free stuff, Republicans are like, no free stuff. Just the current free stuff. No more free stuff. Just the current free stuff you're already getting. Because Republicans don't have spines. Can't you get a Republican to go up there and be like, nah. How do you feel about universal health? Nah. Okay, what do you think about guns? Gun laws? Nah. Remember Dr. No? Dr. Ron Paul? Like that guy. We need politicians who are just going to be like, no, enough. Get out there and do the work. Black Lives Matter comes in. They advocate for policies that destroy these neighborhoods. Republicans can see it. The Democrats then accuse the Republicans of being racist, while the Democrats literally cause these cities to get burnt to the ground. It's the name of the game in politics today. The New York Times can't seem to figure it out. They can't seem to figure out why it is that support has absolutely collapsed. Net support for Black Lives Matter dropping to like -20. What is it, -20? I think net support currently is at like 6. Net support for Black Lives Matter. I love how New York Times is just covering this, as I've been covering this for basically the entire year it's been happening. Good work. People are sick of it. They're starting to wake up to what's going on. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.